Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session focuses on origins and structures of Pidgins and Creoles. I hope and expect by the end of this session you would have an idea of the origins and structures of both. Well, before we start discussing the origin and the structure of both of the Pidgins and Creoles, we need to think about certain things. We need to be clear on what is a Pidgin and what is a Creole. I hope you already know what is a Pidgin and what is a Creole. Just to differentiate between the two and to show you what are the similarities, I would simply say a language that emerges as language C when people of language A and B are in contact and cannot communicate to each other in language A or B because of them being completely different and not mutually understandable. The users, based on the necessities, create a new language, which is called a Pidgin. When this Pidgin language is taken up by the next generation as their first language, we call it a Creole. Now, Creolists have made certain theories. They have proposed certain theories regarding the processes of creolization and the processes of how a Creole becomes a language or a standardized variety, etc. And what they say is that that in all this process, the area of syntax is an area that plays a very important role. Most of the claims that they have made are about the syntax that gives a kind of distinctiveness, I would say, to these Creoles. Now, when we talk of the differences in the Pidgins and in Creoles, I would say Creole grammar, for example, in the African context where Pidgins were used, had African origins. The conclusion of all that was that they were basilects, and Jamaican Creole could not be regarded simply as a dialect of English. Why Jamaican Creole could not be considered as a variety of English? Because the syntax that came to it was from the African languages context, from the Jamaican context. So, the claim that is made is that the syntax plays the main role in determining the position or the status of a Creole. However, there are certain disagreements about the claim as well. Many linguists now find the concept of a common Creole syntax. There is a general belief among the linguists that all the Creoles across the world have a common syntax, which they call Creole syntax. However, and this is considered to be uncontroversial so far, though there are little varieties and little ambiguities that are attached to it. There are certain questions with reference to the development of Pidgins and Creoles and, the development of their structures. The first question that sociolinguists need to consider is, do Pidgins and Creoles share so many common characteristics because they had a common historical ancestor? So, whether it is because of the historical connections, the ancestry from where they have come, that they share those features? Did they arise independently but develop in parallel ways because they used common linguistic material and were formed in similar socio-historical circumstances? Some Pidgins and some Creoles, if we say that all of them had a same structure, does it mean they came from one place? But, they spread and they developed in different places, in different regions at different times, depending upon the circumstances. The third important question for sociolinguists is, was syntax diffused in a way similar to some of the words like savvy? And the fourth consideration or concern is, do the common elements perhaps reflect biological and cognitive constraints on what constitutes a Pidgin or what constitutes a Creole or what constitutes a human language? When it comes to the development and the structures of these Pidgins and Creoles, and especially when it comes to their origin, a very, very popular, a very, very famous model that is used with reference to this or that gives some input into this is the family tree model of the origin of languages. To simplify that, I would say a family tree model is a model which, like this, it shows a tree of languages, where at the top here would be one language, and like this, there would be two branches, and this family would have two languages. Then each language would have, again this bifurcation into here and here, where, each one would have 2 or 3 or 4, as many languages. And, this would go on and on and on. But, all these languages at different stages would belong to one particular family. And linguists have divided all the languages of the world into just a few families in that way. So this family tree model that I have just simplified for you, this gives major input into this origin and structures of Pidgins and Creoles. This is also used, as I have explained it to you, this is for languages. This is also used for Pidgins and Creoles as systems, that how they have originated and how their structures have established over the times. This model has been referred to as the monogenetic hypothesis, that the Pidgins and Creoles, they all have one genetic origin, which means their ancestor, their great-grandparent, I would say, is the same. And, different researches are done on that. Many espouse the view that the European-based Pidgins and Creoles, they descended from the 15th century Portuguese Pidgin that was first used by the African coast, and then it was later on carried to, for example, to India and to Far East. So, the origin, according to all of these linguists, is the same, and they spread across the world, across the globe, to different places to fulfill the basic needs of people, especially for trade purposes or other needs.